Pawn Star's Corey Harrison early Friday morning accusing him of driving drunk. A police report obtained by 8 News Now says Harrison was swerving while driving a truck near Maine and Charleston.
Corey Harrison's motorcycle crash was worse than anyone thought. He didn't just fall off his bike. He had to jump for his life at 40 miles per hour. The Pawn Star's fan favorite has been through more than just tough negotiations. His real life has been full of danger, heartbreak, and shocking twists. And just when he thought he had faced the worst, tragedy struck. His younger brother Adam was gone in an instant from a deadly overdose. Tune in because what we just found out about Corey's latest health scare will leave you speechless. Gold, silver, and scandals. Corey, or as some call him, Big Hoss, was pretty much born into the pawn shop life. His grandfather, the late Richard Benjamin Harrison, opened gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas way back in the early 1980s. His father, Rick, kept it going strong, and Corey jumped in as a kid. By the time Pawn Stars hit television in 2009, the world got to see what goes on in a pawn shop, and Corey became a household name. But there's one deal Corey made that he wishes he could take back, a decision that changed everything. But while everyone was watching him negotiate and deal with weird old stuff on television, his real life was getting complicated. First, there were the usual family business battles. He and his father had some serious disputes over his role in the shop.
He was known as Wax. Although he wasn't among the cast of Pawn Stars, he was a star in the family.
And Corey wanted more ownership, and after threatening to walk away, he got a 5% stake in the business. Not exactly what he wanted, but it was a start. Then there were his personal struggles. Corey had been carrying a lot of extra weight for years. Literally. At one point, he was over 400 pounds. His doctor put him on diabetes medication, and that was the wake-up call he needed. He got a lap band surgery, dropped half his weight, and started living a much healthier life. But just when things were looking up, everything changed when he got into a major motorcycle crash. Corey was riding his bike when something went wrong, and he had to bail while going 40 miles per hour. He literally had to jump off to avoid an even worse crash. Instead of heading straight to the hospital like a normal person, he actually went back to his birthday party first. Later, he had surgery on his hand, ended up with 8 screws and 2 plates, and somehow lived to tell the tale. That was not the end of his troubles. In 2023, he got pulled over in Las Vegas for what police thought was drunk driving. They said he was all over the road and smelled like alcohol. Corey said he had only had one drink 7 hours before getting stopped and blamed it on his car veering to the right. He failed the sobriety test, got arrested, and had to give a blood sample. The results eventually came back. He was over the legal limit. He was not happy about it and planned to fight the charges, but that whole situation definitely was not a good look. But the biggest heartbreak came in 2024. His younger brother, Adam Harrison, passed away from an illegal substance overdose.
That he died from an overdose. Now, 8 News Now received a statement from the Harrison family, which says our family is extremely saddened by the death of Adam. We ask for privacy as we grieve his loss. Adam Harrison was just 39 years old.
It was sudden, shocking, and just devastating for Corey and his family. Adam was not on Pawn Stars, but he had worked at the pawn shop before becoming a plumber. Losing him hit Corey hard, and he made it clear how much he loved and missed his brother with some emotional posts online. With everything that has happened, the weight loss, the accident, the legal mess, the loss of his brother, Corey has been through it all. But he is still out there running the shop, working on the show, and trying to keep things together. Life has thrown a lot at him, but if one thing is clear, it is that he is not going anywhere just yet. Corey has also had a complicated history with relationships. He married his high school sweetheart, Charlene, in 2009, but their marriage did not last, and they got divorced in 2015. His second marriage to Karina, also known as Kiki Harrison, seemed promising, but it ended in divorce in 2018. They cited busy work schedules as the reason for their split, but they remained on good terms. The two welcomed their son, Richard Benjamin Harrison, in October 2018, naming him after Corey's late grandfather. Rumors swirled that Corey and Karina might have rekindled their relationship when Corey posted a picture of himself kissing a woman who looked a lot like his ex-wife. Karina also never changed her last name from Harrison, adding more fuel to the speculation. However, no official confirmation has been made about whether they got back together. Aside from his business, television career, and personal life, Corey has always been a major part of the pawn shop's operations. He started working there when he was just a kid, running errands and cleaning up. Over the years, he learned the ins and outs of the business, became an expert at appraisals, and developed an eye for valuable items. His biggest challenge came when he bought 5 fake Rolex watches when he was 19 years old. That was a costly mistake, but it taught him a lesson that he never forgot. Throughout the years, Corey has seen all kinds of weird and valuable items come through the shop. Some of the craziest include a man who showed up with millions of dollars worth of silver bars in his car, live parrots, and even human skulls from a dental school. He wisely turned down the skulls, knowing they could bring legal trouble. The pawn shop is just blocks away from the Las Vegas Strip, so plenty of gamblers have also come in to pawn expensive possessions just to keep playing.
A statement on behalf of the family reads, "Our family is extremely saddened by the death of Adam. We ask for privacy as we grieve his loss."
In addition to running the shop, Corey has appeared in spin-offs and other television projects. He starred in a game show called Pawnography with his father and his longtime friend Chumley, competing against contestants to see who knew more about valuable items. Corey, Rick, and Chumley even appeared on an episode of iCarly called I Lost My Head in Vegas. More recently, Corey has been part of Pawn Stars Do America, a spin-off where he and the team travel across the country meeting collectors, appraising rare items, and making deals. Even after all these years, Pawn Stars continues to be one of the most popular reality television shows, and Corey remains a central figure in it. Corey has also reflected on his family's journey from struggling business owners to global television stars. In a press conference, he talked about how his father once sold fake Gucci bags at a swap meet to make ends meet. Now, Pawn Stars is watched in over 150 countries and translated into nearly 40 languages. He has acknowledged that while he has learned a lot from his father, the transition of leadership at the pawn shop has not been smooth. Corey and Rick often clash over business decisions, especially when it comes to evaluating items. His grandfather, Richard, also had a strong presence in the shop, and disagreements between the 3 generations made for some intense moments on television. Even with all the arguments, the Harrison family remained close, and Corey's grandfather was a huge influence in his life until he passed away in 2018 from Parkinson's disease. The death of his grandfather was a major loss for Corey and his family, but nothing could have prepared them for losing Adam. Corey's social media posts in the wake of his brother's passing showed just how much he was grieving. The entire Harrison family has been mourning privately, and they have asked fans to respect their need for space. Meanwhile, rumors have surfaced that Corey had a major health scare recently. Some reports claim that he suffered a stroke, while others suggest it was another serious medical issue. However, there is no official confirmation from Corey or the Harrison family about any recent health problems. The next round of unexpected deals and high-stakes trades is about to unfold, when deals get dangerous. Walking into the shop with an old double-barrel French Coach gun, the guy's got one thing on his mind: get rid of it. His wife hates it, and he is eyeing a Les Paul guitar instead. This thing is not just any gun. It has gold inlay, fancy engraving, and a spring-loaded bayonet that makes it look like something straight out of a pirate movie. Rick takes one look and knows it is special. But special does not always mean valuable, so he calls in a gun expert to break it down. The expert is all over it. This thing is a rare, high-end firearm from the mid-1700s. It was made in France, but later modified in England, a real Frankenstein of a weapon. The reason? Highwaymen, basically old-timey robbers, were a huge problem, and coach riders needed serious firepower to fend them off. This gun was perfect for that. Fire both barrels, hit the bayonet release, and there is a nasty defense weapon ready to go. Rick is now drooling over it. He knows it is worth at least $10,000 at auction, but that does not mean he is paying that much. The seller starts high, hoping for $6,000. Rick counters way lower, $2,500. After some back and forth, they land on a $4,000 cash trade. But then Rick offers a curveball.
Smith & Wesson has been making guns since the 1850s. Some of their guns were so popular, they became iconic weapons. But this thing's different. It's one of their rare flops that didn't sell well.
An original '78 Les Paul. That changes everything. The seller is a guitar guy, and when Rick pulls out the pristine, never-played Les Paul, the gun is forgotten. They shake on the deal. Guitar for the gun. Both guys walk away happy, and Rick just snagged one of the coolest antique firearms he has ever seen. Then there is Davey Deals, the guy who somehow always ends up spending more money than he planned. This time he walks in with a samurai sword, claiming it is from the 1500s and worth $18,000. Rick is not buying it, literally, until he gets an expert to check it out. Turns out the sword is legitimate, made by a well-known Japanese swordsmith centuries ago. It is in amazing condition, and yes, it is actually worth between $15,000 and $20,000. Davey is convinced he is getting his full $18,000. Rick laughs. He starts low, offering $10,000. Davey fights back. They go back and forth, but Davey knows he is not getting full price in cash. That is when he sees something in the shop, a custom sand rail. Big tires, beefy engine, the kind of thing that tears up the desert. He has wanted it for a while, so he pivots. Forget cash. How about a trade? Rick is not just handing over his off-road toy, though. After another round of haggling, they land on a deal. The samurai sword plus $8,000 for the sand rail. Davey's wallet takes a hit, but he leaves with the toy he has been dreaming about. Next up, a guy walks in with an ancient-looking blunderbuss, the kind of gun pirates used to blast anything in their path. He does not know much about it, just that it is old and his family had it forever. Rick is not sure if it is real or a clever fake, so he brings in another expert to break it down. Turns out it is legitimate, made in London in the mid-1700s, used for ship and coach defense. Back then, you would load these things with anything you had, nails, glass, gravel, just to make sure whoever was on the receiving end regretted their life choices. The expert confirms it is worth between $3,500 and $5,500 at auction, but more like $2,500 in a store. That is all Rick needs to hear. The seller wants $3,000, but Rick is not about to shell out full price. He counters with $2,000 in cash or $2,500 in store credit. The seller hesitates, but then remembers he needs an engagement ring for his girlfriend. $2,500 in trade it is. Deal done. Rick gets an awesome antique gun, and the guy gets a ring. And then there is a guy bringing in a 19th century Colt revolver, thinking he has struck gold. The revolver is a real beauty, nickel-plated with intricate engravings, and it has been in his family for generations.
It is the quintessential Colt. It was the most powerful handgun on the market for almost 100 years. If you wore one of these on your hip in the Old West, you were pretty much the man.
He figures it is worth a fortune. Rick, being the cautious buyer he is, calls in his firearms expert to check it out. Turns out the revolver is authentic, made in the mid-1800s, but it is not some rare, one-of-a-kind piece. It is valuable, but not quite the jackpot the seller was hoping for. Rick asks the big question, what is it worth? The expert estimates between $6,000 and $8,000 at auction, which means Rick is not offering anywhere close to that. The seller wants $7,000. Rick counters with $4,000. The seller balks, tries to push for more, but Rick holds firm. Eventually, they settle at $4,500, and Rick gets himself another solid addition to his collection. Then, someone walks in with a vintage Rolex Submariner, claiming it is from the early 1960s. It looks clean, but Rick has seen enough fake watches to be skeptical. He calls in a watch expert, and after a close inspection, it turns out to be the real deal. Not only that, but it is an early model with rare features, making it a collector's dream. The seller wants $12,000. Rick starts at $8,000. They go back and forth, but the seller knows he has something special. Eventually, they agree on $10,000, and Rick walks away with a vintage Rolex he can flip for a hefty profit. Then comes another curveball, a medieval knight's helmet. The seller says it is from the 1500s and belonged to a noble warrior. Rick is not convinced. Medieval armor is one of the most commonly faked collectibles, so he brings in an expert to verify it. The expert does some tests, checks the construction, and confirms it is indeed from the late 1500s. The helmet is in great condition for its age and could fetch between $15,000 and $20,000 at auction. The seller is hoping for $16,000. Rick offers $9,000. They haggle for a bit, and finally they agree on $11,000. The seller walks out with a good payday, and Rick gets a genuine piece of medieval history. Some trades go beyond money, turning into unforgettable moments of passion and history. High stakes, high drama. Pawn Stars has seen some seriously wild trades over the years, but some deals really stand out as legendary. Imagine walking into a shop with a bronze bust and walking out with a stash of silver worth thousands. That is exactly what went down when a guy came in with a legitimate Vatican-licensed Michelangelo Madonna bust. He was thinking big money, $80,000, but let us be real, it is just a mold of an original masterpiece. Still, the thing looked fantastic, no damage, had all the right markings, and was part of a limited run. That is a strong selling point. But here is the problem. While it is a beautiful piece of art, Michelangelo did not personally chisel it. The expert comes in, takes a look, and confirms it is real. He even throws in a cool history lesson about how Michelangelo actually signed the original because tourists back in the day were crediting the wrong artist. Even with all that prestige, the resale value was not hitting that $80,000 mark. The expert valued it closer to $35,000. That is a big gap, and when it came down to brass tacks, the shop was not looking to gamble too hard. A cash offer of $23,000 went on the table, but the seller was not biting. Then came the twist. This guy was all about bartering. Instead of cash, he wanted to swap for 100 pounds of silver. With silver prices sitting right, that trade stacked up to $24,000 in value. Now that is some next-level haggling. Deal made, bust out, silver in. Another wild moment came when a guy rolled in with an old-school Las Vegas club $5 casino chip. It does not sound like much, right? But this was not just any chip. Only 8 of these were known to exist. That made it a collector's dream. The owner was looking for $6,000, but that was pushing it. The counteroffer, $3,000, and the guy was not thrilled. But he had another idea, mix in a trade. He set his eyes on a set of Rat Pack statues, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and Dean Martin. The shop had them priced at $600, but their actual cost was much lower.
Had been working on perfecting the revolver since the 1830s. And by the time of the Civil War, he hit it big with the Colt Army. It was precision engineered, quick, and reliable.
The shopkeeper crunched the numbers and made the deal. $3,000 in cash and the statues thrown in. For a rare chip like that, it was not a bad trade. The seller walked away happy, probably straight to the casino, to see if he could turn that $3,000 into something more. Then there was a guy with an antique harmonica, a real piece of history from the early 1900s. What made it special? The Zeppelin design on it. Back in the day, airships were the future of travel, and this harmonica was basically a time capsule of that hype. If it was just a regular harmonica, it would not be worth much, maybe $10 or $20. But with that unique engraving, its value jumped up. The shop put an offer on the table, $200. The seller wanted more, but there was not much wiggle room. He tried to push for $300, but the shop held firm. The final offer? $200 and a Timex watch. It was not the Rolex he was joking about, but a deal is a deal. And then there is the guy who literally pulled treasure out of the trash. A vintage Louis Marx & Company tin toy. Found in a dumpster, cleaned up, and brought to the pawn shop, it was a little piece of history. The toy still worked, the cars spun around the track, and it was in decent shape despite some box damage. The guy thought he had a gold mine, asking for $200. The shop was not convinced. The reality? These toys, while cool, do not bring in massive dollars unless they are in mint condition with the original packaging untouched. This one had been through the ringer. The counteroffer? $40. The seller tried to push higher, but the shop would not budge. The final agreement? $40 in cash plus $20 in store credit. Not exactly a jackpot, but for something pulled out of the trash, it was pure profit. The surprises did not stop there.
A guy named Charles Ponzi, who in the 1920s made millions off a fake investment scam. The one thing all Ponzi schemes have in common, in the end, someone gets screwed.
One collector walked in with a vintage Coca-Cola vending machine from the 1950s. The bright red color, the classic script logo, and the unmistakable nostalgia factor made this a sweet item for the shop. The machine was in working condition, had all its original parts, and could still keep sodas cold. The seller had a number in mind, $4,000. The shop loved the machine but was realistic about its resale potential. The counteroffer came in at $2,500. The seller was hesitant but ultimately took the deal. It was a fair trade for a piece of Americana. Another unique trade came in the form of a rare 1970s concert poster featuring the Rolling Stones. Posters like this, in pristine condition, are highly collectible, especially if they are from significant tours. This one had the right mix of rarity and nostalgia. The seller initially wanted $8,000, citing its condition and the fact that only a handful were ever printed. The expert was brought in, verified its authenticity, and estimated the real value closer to $5,000. Negotiations were tense, but they landed at $4,500. A solid deal for both sides. A man once came in with an original 1920s baseball glove, hoping to hit a home run with a big payout. The glove was in good shape, considering its age, and had a famous player's signature faintly visible on the inside. The seller wanted $3,000, but sports memorabilia can be tricky. The expert confirmed it was authentic, but the faded signature hurt the value. The final deal? $1,700 in cash. Not exactly the seller's dream number, but still a respectable payday. One of the strangest trades involved a custom-built pinball machine from the 1980s. The seller had spent years refurbishing it, and the mechanics worked like new. It had unique artwork, limited production, and all the lights and sounds that made vintage pinball a cult favorite. The seller had an ambitious price of $7,000 in mind. The shop was intrigued but skeptical. A specialist was called in, checked all the wiring and parts, and valued it at closer to $4,000. After some serious back and forth, the final sale was locked in at $3,800. Not bad for an arcade classic. Would you have paid more for this arcade classic? Or was the final price fair? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts.